Fine. Okay. So in this video, we are going to learn about how to write the scalable Apex code. So simply means the best practices to get a good code for integrating or for testing and with less bugs and with high code coverage area. So in this video, we will know about what are the main points to remember whenever we are writing the code. The first thing is just we have to remember about the governor limits in a Salesforce. Always write a code considering governor limits only. Within the governor limits only you have to write the code, or else it will give you the first error you can see the you see in the Apex code is simply that one. And the coming next one to bulkification. So whenever we are going to the bulkification, so just never use DML statement inside a loop. Like DML means data manipulating, like insert, update, delete, all these things. So never use inside any loop. And like use collections to process the bulk records, like we have list, sets and map. So if you want to get unique data, then go for sets, or else you want anything means go from lists. If you want both means you can go through maps also. And like write an efficient SQL queries. Don't use any SQL queries inside the loops. Always write up outside the loops. It is the best efficient SQL query. And use where limit and select specify fields instead of select only. Okay, this is the best thing. And like if you want to handle the data, it's better to storage used to better to write in a maps, like store required records like in map id object to avoid unnecessary queries. And to whenever you want to use both list and set means, then it's better to go through the map only, so it will make your code lines very smaller, because the less code give the good efficiency and high work. So we have to focus on those. For that only we are learning the best practice related to the Salesforce. So and the next one is like optimize the DML statements. Like perform bulk DML operations by updating a list instead of updating record one by one. Okay, in a list we can gather some queries, so within that query we can get, and we can update through that one by one is will get a less many time and go back through that one only. And like use asynchronous apex, like use for a future method, queuable or batchable for heavy operations. It's better to do because the whenever it may be updated, but it will be updated, right? So that's why it's better to choose asynchronous apex whenever you're going for bulk. And like whenever you are going to large scale processing, avoid synchronous process for large transactions. Use platform events we have. And avoid hard coded values like custom metadata, custom settings, and all these things. We have to stores value, like the always store some values in custom metadata and custom settings are constant. And like avoid putting text directly in apex class. Use custom labels for ua messages. That's the best thing I have seen in some another page. And use try catcher blocks to handle exceptions and log errors properly. Try catcher will the it will give the good handle exceptions and give logs errors properly. And uh, and using helper classes and service layer and utility methods to avoid the code duplication mainly. And like implementation trigger handle framework to control trigger execution means we have to use a trigger framework to handler easily. And like we have some limit methods to monitor resource users, like limits.get queries to check SQL limits, and limits.get DML statements to track DML usage whether it is updated or deleted or inserted. So we have all these DML statements, right? So for that we can choose those. And like you have like test driven development TDD. It's at least 75 code percentage. Everyone knows that. And avoid recursive trigger execution. Use static variables to prevent infinite loops in a triggers. And like use database.savepoint for a transactions. So using of database.savepoint for transactions helps rollbacks changes if something goes wrong. So it's the best tool and best advantages for a code. And we have leverage at the right and invocable method for flow integration. So make apex methods available for flow where needed. So it's a good thing using, like available for flow is a very needed thing, because converting of from that to the that to this. So and avoid unnecessary field updates, like updating record unnecessarily can cause performance issues. So this is not that much of thing to for a best practice. And that next one is implement governor friendly pagination, like use offset in SQL queries or standard set controller for a large data pagination. And use batch apex for large data processing. I said that asynchronous apex. Batch apex, we know that it can upload many of the jobs, it will perform in the jobs. So by using queue apex job, it will go through with the flow of flex queue. And like optimize queries using indexing, like means filter queries using indexed fields to improve the performance. Use the main fields to queries, like we have many of the fields in our object, but use the good field which can give a result for us, like equals plus min max. And in previous video I have discussed about the SQL queries. And minimize callouts in the loops, so like collecting data and make single API call instead of multiple calls in inside a loop. And we have to use limits for future and queuable methods, so governor limits still apply in future and queuable. So we have to check that one also, because in asynchronous also we have there some limitations, we have to follow those. And don't think synchronous won't contain any rules. And secure code against SQL injection, like use escape single quotes when dynamically forming any queries. And check the monitor CPU time limits. Apex code execution must stay with CPU time limit. And proper logging and debugging also, it's a proper thing, like use system.debug wisely to avoid excessive logging. And optimize for a multi-tenancy also, because Salesforce runs on a shared resources. So optimize queries and DML operations are must and should. So for that we have to optimize our multi-tenancy also. And avoid too many nested loops. I never performed any nested loops. And regular codes, always review code for efficiency, security, and scalability. This is about the main best practices I have noted in my notes and I am discussing with you. So simply we are overviewing, like whenever we are going to write a code, just you have to think about the governor limits and what the bulkification you are doing, whether you are using efficient SQL queries or not, using maps for data handling, and optimizing the DML statement for any larger using synchronous processing. And for any large processing, use the platform events from the Salesforce. And avoiding hard code values. And proper exception handling, like using a try catch and all these things. And use apex trigger framework for handler. And the next one is follow the limitations of the limits methods to a monitor, like limits to dot get queries and limits to dot DML statements and all these things. And follow the TTD, because the code coverage is very important. And avoid recursive trigger execution, and use database.save point for transaction. And these are the main things about these on things. And the monitor CPU time one also you have to think. And while whenever you are going to asynchronous also, we have some limitations through asynchronous. Okay, thank you.